a good start, but
it's a very good start. But we need to have more room and
like a cigar lounge.
Yeah,
kind of
I would be down to have some stoves too.
Maybe like a real mammoth skull.
Yeah, something cool
on the wall.
Yeah, that would be sick.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe even some like artifacts, like a spear, or so, just shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
That we'd be into.
Like maybe Lenin's remains.
John Lennon. Lenin. You mean Lenin from the Bolsheviks?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe him. Or,
what's his name? Lenin.
It's a weird first name, isn't it?
Vladimir Lenin. What's the first?
I think it is. It's like a Vlad.
How do we not know Lenin's first name? Shame on us.
That's weird.
I think maybe Vladimir.
You think so?
It's my final answer.
Vladimir Lenin.
Yeah.
There's that asshole.
There he is.
Vladimir.
He's embalmed. They have his remains, in Stalingrad or whatever they call it now.
That guy fucking killed a lot of people.
Yeah.
Or he was the cause of a lot of people's death.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it's just us talking about women. Mm-hmm. All right. I'm going to start recording.
Maybe not just women.
Maybe cat ladies. Good. All right.
Welcome to the Logosphere. This is Chris Stites, here as always with J.D. Roof.
Hello. Good evening.
And this evening we're going to talk about relationships in sobriety. We're going to wade into that water. There's a lot to discuss there. In recovery circles, I was thinking they have expressions like romance and finance, or in a cruder way sometimes it's referred to as the pink and the green, as certain areas that can be...
The pink meaning what?
I mean, I'm not going to get into it. I don't really know. I'm not going to...
The pink and the stink?
Yeah. That pink. Yeah. But, there's areas that are hazardous for people who are trying to get sober, stay sober.
Right.
What's that all about?
Well, it's funny because something that comes to mind is the route I took, heavily addicted to drugs and alcohol.
You were known as the priest, right?
Yeah, I was known as the preacher, the priest.
The preacher?
Yeah, well, the priest, actually. I didn't preach that much.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not that great of a preacher. I'm a good cheerleader, but not a great preacher. Mm-hmm. I'll get the guys going and everybody like,
you are a good cheerleader.
I am a good cheerleader, right? And I got that rascalness to me. But yeah, there's a couple of routes that were offered to me, and I know probably offered to you, but there's this whole idea of keeping the snake in the cage, and this is just for men only. Mm-hmm. But when you come in to, you're heavily addicted to some kind of substance, and you're trying to, you're just going to totally right about face and put the plug in the jug or get sober. There's this idea of anything that you can get pleasure out of, you'll become addicted to. So sex being one of them, relationships, the cat and mouse chase of like trying to chase down the girl and, woo the girl and then she, go on dates and usually that's all, predicated on sex. And so when I first got sober, I came from that school of thought. My first sponsor, God rest his soul, Larry, for me, he was just like a mentor. He told me, keep your snake in the cage for 365 days. And that means no extra, no sexual relations, no dates, no BJs, no nothing.
Flirting with the...
No flirting.
Girl at the office.
Almost like a Orthodox Mormon kind of, or some kind of like a Hasidic Jew kind of thing. Like you just don't mess with girls. You keep with the men, you hang out with men.
And so you actually listened to that?
I actually listened to that,
which is unusual, I think.
There was a decent looking female in my rehabilitation center, and there was some flirtation that happened, and she leaned in and kissed me when there's no fraternization allowed in the house, and it was brought up to the counselors and everything. And then that's when Larry stepped in and kind of charged me with that. He said, you can't control your emotional nature.
So it was kind of like a little bit of a sexual assault there on her part.
Yeah, I mean, I was a willing, I mean, I was down, But the funny thing that I found now, because I did do it for about a year and 9 months. So I kept a year, didn't date, and just hung with the dudes.
And then for 9 months you tried, but you just had no luck.
Yeah, basically 9 months I just struck out at the bat. Yeah, and the problem with making those commitments, I mean, and this is just my opinion, but the problem with me is that you can get other addictions, like porno addiction. I was 21 and crazy, and
This is pre-internet. You had just giant collection.
Yeah, we had this house where all these guys lived at, right? And we had this giant collection of DVD porn, right? And it was like this flip book, right? And everybody added
like
to
one
it.
of those CD books that people used to have. So you had to took them out of the cases, and they were all in there.
Yeah, they were all in there, and some of them
shared library.
Yeah, the shared library, and some of them would be stuck together
Naturally.
And this was back in the day when you would have to go to the shop to get porno.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other element that is just gone.
You can just do it from the privacy of your own
home. You can
home.
just do it privacy. You can go on incognito mode, whatever. Nobody can track you, and you can just jerk away, right? But it wasn't like that in 2004. It wasn't quite there yet. I mean, cell phones were around, but there wasn't the iPhones, and
you had to wait for the buffering for a long time.
Yeah,
it really wasn't.
Or you had to hard download the content from like a paid website or some Napster.
Yeah,
I remember Napster,
torrent,
some weird thing, and then you had to have it loaded on a drive somewhere that you could go and do your little wanky to, and so it was still a rampant problem, but so I built this habit because I went too far. I think I went way too far, and I got addicted to porno, and it was not good. Yeah. And I actually ended up having to do work, therapeutic and work, introspection to kind of get over that, right? And then I started dating. In sobriety. Yeah. And the first couple times was not a vision for you.
Now there's lots of theories, I think there's a bit of controversy here.
Right.
There is, you talked about, Larry imposing on you the 1 year.
Right.
No one's really sure where that 1 year rule came from.
It's a magic rule, I guess. Yeah.
No one ever exactly wrote it. It just kind of came to be probably from a lot of shared experience.
Yeah.
After a year, it's like a lot needs to get hashed out in the first year of sobriety.
And what's engineering that is the majority of drug addicts and alcoholics come into sobriety with severe just perverted sexual ideals. Like just, it's like, I want to say 80%.
There's an expression, they say our pickers are broken.
Yeah, sick pickers.
Yeah.
Right. So that's something that...
What's that all about? I mean, probably in part it's, probably a lot of people who have addiction issues have even childhood sexual trauma. Right. So there's all that stuff that's going to get reenacted in all kinds of strange ways.
Right. As an adult.
Right. Also low self-esteem. Anyone who is trying to get sober has been deplorable in 100 different ways. And so by the time we get sober, we probably don't have a very high estimation of ourselves. And so the people that that we're attracted to and the people that are attracted to us are similarly people that don't have high estimations of themselves.
Yeah, low self-esteem, right? And that esteem thing is a devil. It really is, because when it's got a hold of you and you just think over and over and over again in your head that you're just a piece of shit, you're worthless. Well, you're going to attract that. I mean, I truly believe in that, because people that have higher self-esteem, I mean, if you think about it, it's just a simple principle. They are not attracted to people with low self-esteem unless there's some kind of parasite narcissist or something.
There is there's stereotypes that cut both ways, as far as there's the girl who likes the bad boy. He's sometimes referred to as a fuck boy. Yeah. He's emotionally unavailable. She wants to fix him. Yeah. He's got tattoos. Yeah. He's talking to a lot of other girls. He's sort of a player, and she wants to win him over, and she, there's an interesting stereotype that always fascinates me, and I've never heard anyone really break this down well, but this thing that it's not uncommon for women to fall seriously in love with men who are incarcerated for a long time, right?
Right.
My homegirl connected me with this dude who's locked up in San Quentin. He's serving 25 to life. I decided to write him a letter, and then it's like a person that you have no prospect of maybe ever meeting, but there's this phenomenon of people developing these strong emotional attachments to, arguably the worst stock on the market.
Yeah. You think it's possibly because there's no threat, like they're a threatening person, right? If they were out, they're very threatening and crazy.
Yeah.
But there's no possibility.
There's probably an allure to be had there with there's probably a comfort to be had in the fact that there is no potential for even physical contact. There's this idea, if you want to, part of, I guess, why you'd want to date or be involved with someone who is either emotionally or physically unavailable is because you have a fear of intimacy, because you don't want to get close to someone really. So there's this way of having, like, it's probably like on, like dating apps, there's, a lot of what happens on dating apps is probably people never meeting up, right?
Right.
They're flirting, they're sexting, they're having all these little things, but when it really comes time to, like, meet me at the coffee shop, probably 8 out of 10 or whatever, it's just, that's the end of the transaction, right? Because there's this, there's like this vicarious hit that people get off each other, but the threat becomes higher, the stakes become higher as there's a potential for more physical, emotional intimacy.
Yeah.
If you have someone who's probably same, like if to have, people that have a habit of getting involved with men or women who are married or in relationships. It's like you never really have to commit. You never really have to jump in. There's this sort of safe distance that you can get your thrill from. There might be something to that.
Yeah, it's got to be attached to some kind of traumatic thing in the past. I don't think you just come out from a good family seeking that.
Yeah.
It's funny because I was watching the show Hoarders. And
I was just watching that.
Yeah. So there was this one where this lady Carol comes in, and the wife, this big family. The wife dies. She hangs herself in the basement, and then this family friend, right, who is friends with the wife and everything. Her name's Carol. Just moves in, right, and just takes over the whole place. And she's a crazy hoarder and
she's leaving stuff. She's a parasite.
She's total parasite. She's totally ixnayed the family out.
Yeah.
And I mean, they never get through to Carol really. At the end, she like moves out eventually, and like there's a little happiness kind of after they clean everything up. But then you see the reading at the end, and it's like Carol's gone.
Aftercare.
Yeah, and then the husband's dead, and the family sold the house. It's been condemned. It's like this. It's just like the horror story at the end, right? And but yeah, it's like a parasite.
Yeah.
And it's like, where does that come from?
There also could be that if, say, a woman who's going after someone who's incarcerated, on one hand, it's like, who's the victim here, really? It's you're very vulnerable in some respects if you're in that position because you have nothing really to offer. So, it's maybe easy to be wanted, certainly less likely that you're going to be cheated on.
That's true. Yeah, and then think of it through the male's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Like I couldn't imagine being locked in a box for an extended period of time, and knowing that there's a girl, maybe there's multiple girls that you're pen paling, because it's almost like an infatuation, pen pal, sexual kind of thing.
Yeah,
and I've heard
there's that added thing with women, and there's women are, on average, more aroused by stories.
Right. No, you saw that too. That I think JP breaks that down.
He talks about that.
He breaks that down. He says that men are more into visuals.
Yeah.
And just
that's why there's the kind of the trope of the romance novel, right?
Right. And they're all real sexual.
Yeah, but it's descriptive, and there's the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's not it's visual, so there's a different way. So this idea of getting the letter
it's
probably
the Beauty
hits
and
a
the
little
Beast.
bit different.
It's like the Beauty and the Beast, feminine, hero, but it's perverted.
Yeah,
it's like in that movie, it's all good.
And then there's the added thing of like the topic of the dark triad or the dark tetrad. This idea of women who are attracted to men sometimes who have these characteristics of Machiavellianism and narcissism and psychopathy and sadism, and what that's all about, you know, and this idea that it could be competence, right? A lot of those traits mimic competence.
Right.
It's cockiness, right, which is sometimes hard to differentiate from confidence and competence. So without having the proper savviness, maybe these characteristics are developed as sort of like a peacock display to demonstrate this type of...
Yeah, because there's always that kind of trope thing that, like, the girl is attracted to the bad boy. The motorcycle rider, the guy with the tats, the guy with the beard, you know, like the guy that doesn't... But he, at the end of the day, and you're in a house, and another psychopath breaks in, you want that guy. Yeah. You don't want the squared away kind of weak dude. No. You know, you want the guy that knows how to fight, how to fuck, and how to, you know, get down and make money. And that's the competence maybe thing, because, you know, if you're a total psychopath, you're highly unlikely to be successful. I mean, it's very rare, right? It's 3% of the property. Yeah.
You know, for a female, then, like, you understand why it can be confusing. Like, you want a sensitive guy, but you also want a bad boy. You know, you want someone who can protect you. You want someone who can earn. You want someone who's formidable, someone who's competent. You want someone who's attractive, but you also don't want someone who's going to stray. You know, you don't want someone who is not going to be emotionally intelligent.
Right.
And when men are too sensitive and they turn into like simps, you know,
metrosexual,
and they get friend zoned. And it's not attractive. Women want that, you know.
Lunch dates.
They want that.
Yeah.
So they want this like barely domesticated beast.
Right.
You know.
Is that so crazy?
Which is kind of what we...
But what do men want?
Yeah.
We want the girl that dances on the table, that's got the big ass and the titties, that's outgoing and just wants... But then we don't want that.
Yeah.
We want that, and it's like, great, and wow, this girl's a lot of fun, she's attractive.
And then she needs to be wholesome, and she needs to...
And then she needs... Yeah, you need to make a housewife.
Yeah.
And once you get into a committed relationship, it's like, where are you going?
Yeah.
Who are you talking to? What the fuck are you know? What time is it? You know, it's like you're up there butting around the corner. I experienced that a lot, that possessiveness, and I have that character trait that it's a dark character trait to have.
Yeah, jealousy is one of the most...
Oh, it's such a nasty
painful
human emotion. It's disgusting, actually, and yeah, man, that's probably why somebody like Larry prescribe, because it's a prescription. He, you know, there's two sides of the fence. Like, there's the side of the fence that don't go near these relationships in early sobriety because it's just filled with chaos and confusion and insecurity and jealousy and all that, right? So let's just not focus on that. Let's just focus on, you know, this God's work stuff, right? But then there's the other school of thought that we haven't even dove into, that you're going to have to deal with that anyways. If you want to be a useful human in society, a useful brother, you know, son, father, husband, whatever, you have to be in relationships. So you might as well get it out now.
Yeah.
Right? Work through these problems now.
Write it until the wheels fall off, because that's the only way you're going to learn. There's also an expression, sexual anorexia, that sometimes gets thrown around in recovery circles. People start to become so chaste that it becomes sort of disorder. You know, and there's this idea of having a healthy sex life, and that it's an important part. You know, it's one of the fundamental dimensions of any organism's experience is like this libido and hormones and reproduction and, you know, all of that. And so to just completely neuter that,
neuter's the perfect word too.
Yeah. To neuter that reflex or instinct or drive or characteristic could be unhealthy. You know, and then if we create this negative but it's tough, because on one hand, part of the reason that people are warned away from relationships in early sobriety especially is because they, more than anything, are catastrophic. And so they essentially, they kill, you know?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
They are deadly.
They are deadly.
Literally
they're
deadly.
Tornadoes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but then to create a negative association, if that impulse has the power to actually kill, but we still want to have a healthy relationship with that impulse, So it's always.
Well, you know what it brings me to is like anorexics or even hoarders, right? Because you do have to have stuff. You do have to eat. But if you have a disorder with that particular, realm of your existence, then with alcoholism and drug addiction, it's still taboo in society to be blacked out every day. Like people are going to notice and they're going to be like, dude, something's wrong with Joe, but with hoarding or like anorexia, it's like, I feel like it's a harder thing to separate from.
Because we have to have stuff. You have to eat.
Right.
You can be more or less totally sober. People.
Right.
There's even food probably has chemical effects on us. We're not ever completely sober. We have a relationship with chemicals in the world. But for practical, sake, we can abstain. But some of these other things we can't abstain from.
It's a tough one to get in between, because I understand both arguments for just put the snake in the cage, even a charge to the women, because there's a whole woman side that's like, stay away from these troubled boys.
Yeah.
For a year or 60 or 90 days.
It's a big thing I noticed too, is there's this within recovery communities, and within any communities probably, there's like a policing that takes place over the sexual activity of the participants in the community.
Right.
Probably more than anything in the recovery community, because just of the nature of it, some of the stuff we've talked about already. And so there's this internal policing, there's a ostracization that can take place when people misbehave in those ways. They're looked at as predators, pariahs.
Yeah,
they're
13
outcasted.
Step,
But there's this thing that I've been noticing lately, is there's a perception of a double standard that exists, that sometimes it's thought that men should be punished more severely for sexual misconduct in early sobriety and recovery relationships than women. But the funny thing that I've been noticing lately is that I've heard more of these allegations coming from women than from men. Other women clamoring and saying, how come the women here are not given the same consequential treatment as the men? Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. From my viewpoint, I see a place for that double standard. I just see the basic arithmetic between male and female sexual relations.
Yeah.
And
one's a penetrator, one's not.
Exactly.
Right.
So
you can't get away from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But sometimes women certainly can. There's this idea that in Homo sapiens, that it's a sort of a female sexual selection that takes place.
Right.
At the end of the day,
nasty selection process.
Yeah,
it's brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's
cuts your head off.
Unless, aside from serious, sexual assault, it's going to happen when she says it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And anybody that's in a committed relationship knows that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That the idea, cut your balls off, or being bitch whipped, or that's where all these terms come from. It's that idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's a brutal one too, because there's that idea of the prototypical male, like the Gaston in Beauty and the Beast. He gets all the women besides that one, the female hero. She goes and tames the beast.
Yeah.
Right. But he's got 3 blondes on his nuts all day long.
Yeah.
And anyone in between. And
he wants the one that
he can't get.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of an interesting
the stereotype the other way. There's this, now it's become a little bit more in vogue, borderline personality disorder. Are you familiar with this? So there's a number of different personality disorders: narcissistic personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, obsessive personality disorder, or obsessive compulsive personality disorder. But BPD is one that is kind of stereotypically, and it happens with men too, with narcissism, right? There's this idea that oftentimes women who get into bad relationships that don't go right, they leave saying, I was just terrorized by a narcissist. They do a
tyrannical narcissist,
armchair psychologist, they diagnose them as a narcissist. For the other way, it's women who are more stereotypically diagnosed, casually by the public as having borderline personality disorder. But there's in the same way that women will sort of half-heartedly brag about liking bad boys. Oh, I know I shouldn't, but and giggle.
Yeah.
For men, it's like the idea that she's, we love the crazy, fiery ones.
Right.
The borderline personality disorder is that the woman who will just play with you, she'll fight with you and then she'll make up with you and then she's so sorry and then she's distant and then she's, and so they're incapable of maintaining stable relationships. That's one of the key features, I think, of the personality disorder. So that's kind of like there's the bad boy, locked up, unavailable, and then there's the same thing for men, right? The idea that men, when they're immature, are oftentimes, and even when they are mature, it's like I think there's a reptilian draw, and there's this war that takes place, right, between that drive that we don't understand so well, that doesn't,
Well, it's a nasty drive because it's. I was listening to Joe Rogan and he was talking about this bus analogy with his dick, and he said that like when your dick's hard, it's a whole nother ball game. It's almost like a borderline. It's almost like a different personality comes out, right? It drives you, and then you get the what did he call it? Like the
post-nut clarity.
The post-nut clarity. Yeah. I mean,
I once heard a stand-up comedian say, I think about this all the time. He said, try watching porn after you come.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it
completely changed. Like it's completely your whole perception.
Everything changes. Everything changes.
Yeah.
And that extends into anything with a sexual release, right? Like massage parlors, prostitution, all that stuff, right? Because most of the guys that,
and so there's usually this relationship with shame, right? And there's the fantasy and going into it.
And it's all crazy.
Driven, by your whatever limbic system is just driving you.
Like, let's go.
And then
it's over. And the release happens, and it's like, oh my God, I'm a piece of shit.
Yeah.
I'm a scumbag. I probably have herpes.
Yeah.
I probably have gonorrhea. You know what I mean? And oh man, that's an interesting one. Because I think that's something that I would just, and I'm speaking for myself, most drug addicts and alcoholics suffer from. Especially males. Males fall into that trap. It's one of those input, because it goes back to the thing we were talking about before, where it's something I do believe, and I mean Freud, for the whole idea of sexual repression with Freud, you need to have a sexual life. I think you kind of lose your fucking shit.
But you also need to have some sexual repression, because we're just just super evolved apes,
right?
And if we just followed every whim of our
if we smelled under every skirt, we would be in a lot of trouble.
We'd be dead.
It'd be chaos.
We'd be dead.
You would get a venereal disease,
or you would be, someone's boyfriend, or some, you would just have such a complicated life. You'd have so many people retaliating against you that you would there'd be nowhere to hide.
Well, and I think that's one of the hardest things to come to grips with, is that when you see a single person navigating in the world, and as they get older and older and older, right? Like, it's cool when you're in your 20s, whatever, right? But even then, it's not that cool. It's a life of chaos.
Yeah.
You never know. You don't have somebody that can like depend on. You know.
There's this other idea. I'm kind of jumping in, but I think it's maybe more prevalent for men in recovery than women, and I don't know. I'm not as immersed, obviously, in that.
We're
culture.
Definitely mansplaining.
Yeah, we're mansplaining, so forgive us. But and I don't subscribe to this school of thought, but there's this one which is like, don't date in the first year, but if you are, at least let them know ahead of time that it's just you're gonna smash and you're gonna move on. And if they're okay with it, then
it's okay.
It's all above boards, and you've been honest, and and just have your fun, but just don't get involved, because that's where things get tricky.
It's impossible.
It's impossible, yeah.
Because
every one of those, everything that leads up to the flirtation, the little, with any like seduction relationship, there's a whole, it's a bonding relationship. Ultimately, what's happening is you're bonding in order to have a sexual act, which is historically intended for reproduction,
right?
And so as soon as that shot gets fired, I mean, her brain, whether you wrapped it up or not, is like, I'm in danger. I might have a baby inside of me. This person better, now I need protection.
Right.
Because I'm just out in the forest with for 9 months
with
getting
a belly full of semen.
Yeah.
And what's going on?
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and then there's that fear on her part of like, and then that could drive a guy away because all of a sudden she's anxious and she doesn't know where it's coming from because, she wants assurance that, and she's just being driven, and so to some degree or another, unless you're, I don't know, some, there's a spectrum. Some people aren't as driven by that as others.
Well, but there is a cut. I mean, it's funny because maybe that is a fundamental difference between men and women, because men can go around shooting their load all over the place.
Yeah.
And you do get attached. Like if there's a female that you're attracted to, maybe you like them, maybe you like something about their character, but I call it the cold shoulder. Like men can just get into that mode and just blast loads, hook up with hundreds of women, and whatever. There's no.
They don't have the same investment.
They don't have the
physiologically.
Right, but
women can't escape.
But when females try to do it, and I mean not all females. Obviously, there's a spectrum to this, but mostly they get attached.
Mm-hmm.
They get attached more emotionally.
Yeah,
and so that's why it's harder for a woman to get away with cheating in a relationship, because they're probably gonna they want to act like a man.
And I don't even know if I agree with that. I think that the attachment, yes, I understand the evolutionary explanation,
but look at it in practice.
Yeah,
I mean, how, you know what I mean? Like, we bust a nut and we're in shame, and then we're on to the next thing.
Yeah, that's the other. When it comes to sexual trauma in the history of people with addiction, substance use disorder, whatever. The other thing is this idea, and your wife could speak to this better than we could, but of attachment disorders. And so there's these different, there's a whole theory of different attachment types. Right. There's a healthy attachment type, and then there's all these unhealthy attachment types: anxious, avoidant, anxious. And so a lot of that's what I think that's one way of describing what people, colloquially refer to as toxic relationships. Right. Right. It's like this: break up, get back together. I once saw a person talk about. He didn't even talk about, but he was describing his early sobriety relationships, and he did it without any words, and he just went like this. Yeah, yeah. And so it's like,
stay away, but get on me.
Yeah, yeah. Come closer, but stay away. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of at the same time.
Right.
And so there's this, there's this that'll take place.
Right. No, I think you're right, because I think
sometimes people will switch. Sometimes sometimes someone will have an experience in one relationship where they feel like they're the avoidant one, and the other person is the clingy one, and then all of a sudden they're in a different relationship where they're the ones who are just like, when are they going to text me back? Why aren't they?
Right.
And really attached in that way. Yeah. And there's an addiction to be had even there.
Yeah.
I think in that anxiety.
Right.
There's this idea too, which is that a lot of our experience of certain feelings has to do with the meaning we attach to them.
Right.
So there's an adrenaline spike that comes from even that.
Right.
Even a cheating partner creates a feeling that, in some respects isn't that much different from a high. Yeah. Just biochemically.
Right. And then you can get addicted to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess there are women out there that can just hit it and quit it, like I was talking about earlier. Like there are, you can cut off your emotions, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah.
But I don't think it gets you far. That's the thing.
But either way, it's there's probably degrees of it, but this idea of going around plowing fields, I mean, I just don't know if that's possible without inviting so much chaos in your life.
Oh yeah, for sure. Chaos.
You're letting all of this psychic energy into your sphere.
I know. I mean, Larry broke it down for me this a long time ago, like 20 years ago, 19 years ago. He was saying, sex is the most intimate thing one person can do with another person.
Literally inside them.
Right. And just feeling them, and face to face, and just all that. Yeah,
you're gonna do that with someone that you just don't really know, and have that like extraterrestrial, almost primordial experience, and then just be like, "Yo, see you later," and
yeah,
I'm good.
It's all good. We're good.
We don't even understand what that is. Like that experience is so.
No, we don't.
Yeah,
we don't even understand how babies are. I mean, we know. Oh, this is the but we don't make it.
I mean, and just the fact that reproduction takes place in general.
It's like, what the hell is
that?
There's
this weird driving act that we're compelled to do that we don't understand, and then all of a sudden there's an organism growing that gets there's like a copy that's made,
right?
And then there's death and birth.
It's crazy.
It has to take place because there's a whole death cycle, and you know, and
Right.
we're just like hit it and quit it. Yo, it's cool.
It's
like,
all good. Let's just
smash
have
pass.
fun. Yeah, smash pass. Well, it's just funny because a lot of that came to a head for me when I saw my daughter crowning out of my wife. I
Yeah.
saw her hair, her head for the first time at the hospital, and it was just like,
What?
where the fuck did that come from?
Yeah.
Are you serious? Like, what is this thing? And there's no instructional manual. There's not. It's just like here's this fucking baby now,
Yeah.
and you got to take care of it.
Yeah.
So it's a sacred thing that you're getting involved in. It's
Yeah.
an ancient thing.
Yeah.
It's in our DNA to do, you know, and
Totally.
that's why yeah, it's weird. Is there a healthy? I guess maybe that's maybe what we could try to wrap it up with. Is there what is the healthy repression of it? What is like? I used to be kind of a Nazi when it came to that. Like, if I'm going to work with you and try to help you get sober, I'd say to him, you have to commit to 90 days and keep your dick in the cage, motherfucker. You're a fucking sexual pig, right? And I did that for a lot of years, but what I found is that if you're that hardcore and it's enough to scare somebody off from actually trying to open their mind to sobriety, then I just don't do it. It's like, why? Let them work it out. You know, if they're already in some toxic relationship, because it's such a thing that happens. Like when you see, you know, a boy meets girl on the sobriety campus, it's that hot love. You know, they're infatuated with each other for the first couple of months. They call that hot love, and then it just fizzles.
And part of it is mostly probably what is sometimes talked about as like cross addiction, which just has to do with the fact that no matter what your substance is, you come in, you have a long history of compulsively, regularly having these extreme, super liminal dopamine spikes. Yeah. And then you don't. You know?
And then so
you got to get it
somewhere. Right.
So you're like starving for any type of
stimulant, basically.
Any pleasure, your reward center is just like completely,
Well, it's funny because that always
starving.
That always happens with like stupid things like smoking. I remember when I first put the plug in the jug, I was smoking 2 packs a day and just sucking them down and getting out like, maybe a little too much nicotine, but this is what I want, you know, like just totally fucked on it. I can't really smoke cigarettes today. It's disgusting, you know? But for that period of time when it was all like, okay, this is cut off now.
It's great.
It's fantastic. They're fucking Scooby snacks.
So in the same way, the little wink from, little Missy across the room. Right. It's like, it hits different when you're deprived.
Right.
And so but then it's all wrapped up in, it's mistaken for love. So there's all these, kind of tropes about
things,
the guys falling in love with the girl at the massage parlor and thinking it's just the one.
And we've heard these stories, right? Yeah.
And it's like, so there's all this stuff that's going on.
So I think underneath it all, I would say that we probably both know that you should stay away from it, right? Yeah. Like that would be my proceed with caution tale. But if it's going to scare somebody away from actually trying to like put the plug in the jug and be sober, then let them hit those speed bumps. But at least tell them that you're going to hit some speed bumps because of what your wanker is getting involved in. Yeah. So that's kind of it's almost like the Hegel thing. It's the thesis, the antithesis, and then the synthesis, right? Like I can't be working with somebody and say, no, snake in the cage. I'll try to throw that out there because I know it's probably the right prescription, right? It's probably the right medicine. But I also know that if you go too hard,
it backfires too.
It backfires hard, and
prohibition. On anything,
right? You create Al Capone.
Look at this thing with Trump right now.
Right.
He's got 4 indictments or whatever against him,
and now people are saying that they want to vote for him more,
shooting through the roof.
I was watching this video where this guy was going around just random people, right? And he was asking who would you and there was like 5 or 6 people in this video that said, if he is in jail, I will vote for him. Like, what?
Maybe more likely to, right?
Because it would just be a funny gag on democracy,
Well, and it also demonstrate, now we're getting into a whole other thing, but it demonstrates to those people that it's more proof that the enemy that they're really worried about is a formidable one, because it's the one that's, it's the oppressive force that is.
It's the institution.
After,
yeah. They're after your stuff.
But it's like that way with the prohibition on, early you gotta. It's like there's this way of having a light hand with it all.
That's probably a good way of.
There's a funniness to it. Can't take it too serious. It's like you can't take it too seriously, but in the same respect, you realize that there's almost nothing more, life-threatening and serious than that. And to be able to say that with a smile on your face and be like,
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure you've come across, but like serious, like people that are trying to get sober, but they're seriously addicted to sex, because that's a whole other avenue.
Yeah,
it's a whole ball game. I mean, jerking off 6 times a day, their foreskins falling off. I mean, it's wild. And with that, it's like, okay, well, we need some psychiatric help.
I know. I think sometimes that there's this idea that you get off the drugs and the alcohol and then you turn to sex, but I think that if anything, probably the sex stuff predates the.
Oh yeah,
because then it relates to mommy and daddy and the attachment stuff, and it's so much more fundamental.
Right. And
so sometimes it's just like pulling the cover on something that's.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing, because with that type of depraved person, they need abstinence, I would say.
Dude, some people have it so bad. Everyone, almost everyone has to struggle with it if they're getting sober. Disclaimer: if you're out there and you're
trying to be sober, it is a weird. It's a weird.
There's
wave
a gauntlet that everyone has to kind of run in order to get back to a healthy, reasonable sex life. But some people are so twisted by it that it's.
But it is, on the flip side of all this, kind of dreary talk, there is a way of doing it.
Yeah. Another thing that dude, what about the topic of dating people who are sober, or when you're sober or not?
I know that.
Both of us, obviously.
Yeah, we've experienced both realms.
But dude, there's a lot of people you hear, they're like, I will, they get so burned by dating sober people in recovery that they have this stance of, I would never do it. And I think one of the reasons is because sober people oftentimes are a little bit more volatile in certain ways.
Oh, yeah.
Right? They're a little more sensitive.
Oh, yeah.
The volume's just turned up a little bit more. Right. It's kind of the nature of the ism.
Right.
And so you get two people like that together, and it's more likely.
Yeah, two fires.
Same thing with the latent, or underlying attachment disorders and all this
that
stuff.
Yeah.
And then also I think there's the added component of being, if you're sober and you're involved in a somewhat tight-knit recovery community, then you have everybody in on your business.
Right, it's like a small town.
It's a small town.
Yeah, and everybody's talking about.
Some people get really burned by the small town thing, because everyone's got their nose in your business. They have their opinion on what's going on.
Well, and there's also like cross-pollination possibilities. Yeah, right? Like another guy comes in or another girl comes in and to the community, and there's. Oh wait, I like this one, but man, I really like this one. Oh, but now she's with him, and he's a loser. I heard him talk about fucking all these hookers on the street corner for $50 every night.
There's a liability there.
Oh man,
because people are around each other.
Yeah,
a lot. They spend time together.
A lot of sickness.
But then there's a benefit to that too.
Right.
I think the small town thing can be very helpful.
Of course.
There's an accountability, right?
Right.
If you have to live your relationship in full view of other people, there's this added incentive to do it right.
Right. Yeah. No, I went down that route. I had a long-term relationship with a person that was not sober, and I've had a long-term relationship with a person that is sober, and they both almost knocked on marriage's door. Right. One was a domestic partner of mine. Like, we were a legal domestic partnership in California, and for years, and I got burned. And I thought, I will never date a fucking alcoholic, drug addict type female ever again in recovery. I've been in both camps where I fundamentally, to my core, to my cellular core, believe that there's no girl in recovery for me. I will never date a girl. They're damaged goods. It's like shopping at a used car lot for a Ferrari.
Yeah.
And for a brand new Ferrari. And I heard all those things coming from all these wise men. And but I now I've come around, and I believe that how can you have a relationship with somebody that participates in that other world of drinking drugs, and
well, there's that. There's the idea of being with someone who actively is, indulging in the thing that is deadly for you.
Deadly. Yeah.
But I think for me, what's more important is just there's an understanding. There's something about being a sober person who has a recovered way of living.
Right.
There's like a whole subculture to it.
Yes.
That even for, it's like you can't describe to people even.
No, you have to live. It's a lived experience.
Yeah. And then it almost becomes like a religion.
Yeah.
Like the idea of dating or marrying someone from a different faith than you,
right.
or if you're a fundamentalist Christian, you're not going to go off and marry a
Acidic Jew,
or a secular atheist or something like that.
Right.
It's just not, So there's that component that is that's the the biggest benefit for me is just that unspoken understanding of certain hidden things that it's just you don't really understand the value of it unless it's missing.
Yeah, but wade in those waters with caution because there's trouble ahead. Mm-hmm. Because the statistical probability that two people that are, crazy drug addict or alcoholics
are going to relapse too.
Are going to either relapse and not stay sober and have severe mental
depression,
emotional,
anxiety.
Oh my God, everything, traumatic shit.
Yeah.
And you put those under one roof. Good luck, motherfucker. I mean, really, good luck. I mean, the reality is relationships, having a solid relationship with another person of the opposite sex, right? If you're heterosexual or even if you're gay, is one of the hardest things to do.
Period.
Right, properly.
Yeah, sober or not, I'm sure.
Right. So maybe we ended at that.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those things. Maybe we'll touch back on this one day. But it was a good one.
It was.
All right. Have a good night. See you.